As it's the afternoon session, can we just have a big whoop for Vitaly? No, whoop. No, you lot weren't doing it. On your own, you at the back need to do a whoop. Whoop. There you go. I mean, it's the first time at Smashing Conf, and it's such a great vibe. And yeah, thanks, Vitaly, and everyone behind the scenes. Let's give them a round of applause. There you go. Oh yeah, I've got to do a talk. Wait a minute. Hello. If you like pink, you're in for a treat. Only one. I thought I'd get a bit more for that. So yeah, my name's Dan. These days I am a consultant, so I get to consult on design systems and things. And I've worked at some places that have logos, which is always nice. So this is a short talk. First of all, you download Figma. You make some components. And that's it, really. So there's your design system. Any questions? Instead, I thought we'd start nice and small by looking at space, loads of planets, loads of stars. I feel like it should be Brian Cox or something, for those that get the reference. And we're in there somewhere, so maybe we'll start a bit closer to home. It's a poor analogy, I know, but I like it. It's from a film I saw when I was a kid called Powers of 10 by Charles and Ray Eames. And so I saw this at one of the first IMAX screens when I was a kid, and it stayed with me ever since. And it's come really in handy for talks, which is good. So let's be clear, when I'm talking about design systems, this quote from a 2019 Smashing Magazine article, what are the chances? Happens to encapsulate it really nicely. Because you're not necessarily wrong saying you've got a bunch of components. You're not necessarily wrong saying you've got a code component library. But that kind of did it for me. Because it's not just about those things, though they're important. It's the relationships between them and between people and all of these other things. It starts to sound a bit bigger than we thought it might be. And because I'm a heavily reductionist kind of person, it's just people, objects, and relationships. No big deal, really. It's fine. So we're going to start at this high level, this macro level, and a lot of this stuff, I'm assuming that this is starting a new design system, but really, if you haven't already done these steps, it's fine. Go and do them afterwards, retrofit it. What I come across time and time again is people don't tend to stop and ask why. Like Amy said earlier, there's typically those three things of efficiency, consistency, and scalability, which gets said, and they're kind of true. That's kind of an end product. Why do you think you need a design system? What are your problems you think this might address? This gets skipped almost all the time, and it's become a personal bugbear because we all have them. So if you put aside those three things that everyone says, what are your current pain points? Is it designer-developer communication? Is there something about a process or tooling or something that is causing you issues, which is why you're not consistent, which is why you're not efficient? That's a good place to start. Because those things aren't going to go away just because you've built some components. So you've had this big view and you've asked this really existential question. Why do we need a design system? And then maybe you shriek inside a little bit when you realize everything's a problem. Actually, the way that we deliver products, the way that we communicate, all of this stuff is a bit flawed, which makes your story different to their story and their story, although the end product might look similar. So out of all of this, what do you think you can actually have an impact on? So we've not gone very far. Doesn't sound like a design system so far. So we've scoped it down from trying to fix all of these problems down to maybe this space feels like we can have some impact. Given that, who's it for? Who are your audiences? Who it's not for is us as the people making it. This is not an ego boost. This is not a trip to show how great we are at Figma. It's for other people. So starting with that mindset is really powerful because we're not doing it to make ourselves happy. There's probably other ways, possibly involving alcohol and Las Vegas. We could do that. So following this kind of line of thought, we then think about, given all of these people, which might be designers or product people, delivery people, what do they think is valuable about this whole idea? What would be useful to them? And it starts to give this bit of a framework now. This proposed idea of a design system is based on something. So what's valuable to a designer doing product work might be it reduces their scope a little bit. They've got a new problem to solve, but maybe half of it exists in the design system. That's valuable. From a delivery point of view, they might not get any huge gains of delivering things twice as fast, but it will be good quality. There might be less bugs. As a product person, maybe that extra efficiency means you get to spend more time experimenting and more time in the problem space. You're solving the problem in the right way. So value is massive and overlooked. So on our little journey here, we've got a sense of who it's for, what they might find valuable, and if we start to know these things, we get an idea of, well, how do we know we've done it right? Have we actually had any impact on any of this? And that kind of almost breeds metrics, but I'd say, nah. Spend time with people and work out, have we actually made your life any better from doing this work? So as a designer, do you feel like it's having an impact? To me, that's often more powerful than looking at metrics to see how many components are used. Those cold numbers need interpretation. Not always that interesting. So let's go a little bit deeper. I'm a big fan of clouds, so here's a cloudy picture for you. Let me get a little bit closer still. The logical thing would be, as we work at a company, we're very familiar with how it all works, and we make a whole bunch of assumptions. People work in this kind of way, they use these tools for communicating. But we almost need to park all of that and have an external mindset and realize, like, these are assumptions based on our experience. So let's start with generic whiteboarding tool and have some questions. How do people work? What do they do? What might the impact of this thing be? Like, what is the lay of the land today? And we can start by going, do you know what we don't know? And that's a position of strength, because you can do something about that. It's better than pretending. So in order to know things, we need to do some digging. And very often around design systems, you hear audit, and most of us might turn to visual audit, which is fine. There's a place for that. But literally everything can be audited. And so again, using Post-its, you can say, we've got a question mark because maybe we're not close to development. We're not sure what that looks like. Flesh it out a bit. Have some conversations. Get to map it out a little. What tooling do people use? Yeah, you might all be Figma people, but actually the marketing department are using Photoshop. There's nothing wrong with that. But you didn't know it before you did that exercise. When it comes to actually releasing code, that might be so far away from where you're comfortable, and you know nothing about it. But you might be the first person that's pieced together this whole puzzle, beginning to end. And you've got a bunch of Post-its and arrows, however lo-fi makes sense to you, and you go, this is us. I've done some research. I bet you no one else has done that. So when we think visual audit, you might go to your favorite website of choice and start to look for recurring patterns. And so very superficially, you're saying, OK, well, I'm recognizing some things that might be useful. We can cut them up, and we can start to say, well, these may be some reusable components. That's scratching the surface. We can't see different states. We don't know what their use case is. We don't know where else they might occur, because this is based on looking at one screenshot. So it should be making us ask a lot of questions and very few assumptions at this point. So thinking about workflow, and we'll use it as an example, it seems quite abstract, really. But how do people solve problems in a product team or a feature team and actually release it today? That's what we need to support. The design system needs to empower these people to deliver the work that they do to the best quality they can and get the best output possible and enjoy doing it. If they resent the whole design system, it's just not going to work. So if we propose something like, maybe you've got this kind of a workflow, we can prove out, is that true? We can ask around the product teams and use that as a basis for future conversations. We can then think, ideally, how would we like the design system to kind of work as part of that workflow? Again, super lo-fi. And we can question that, going, all right, so as a designer, yeah, they should probably check first, right? Maybe. So they should look and see if this broader business problem they've got, how much of it might already exist as bits of UI or bigger components. What happens if they don't have stuff there? For now, that's kind of a black box. We think, well, all right, maybe there might be a thing where they solve the problem in the right way, and they should bring it back in. So we don't know what that looks like, but we're starting to get a sense of there are many things that might happen outside of that workflow. So these two words I've heard used so many times in a really negative context, because they're not sexy sounding, like, ooh, risk, debt. That sounds like a thing I want to get involved with. But they're really, really powerful when you see them as a tool. So you get a sense of, as a company or as a team, do people understand these things? Or do they work blindly? Do they ever pay off their tech, design, or product debt? Is it still there? On the back of a design system, we could help pay some of that off. But if the attitude doesn't change, you're going to keep accruing debt, and that's just the way things are. So you start to get a sense of, underneath the surface, what are the attitudes, what are the ways of working which might be problematic? A design system is not going to automatically fix everything. If there's a huge gulf between your design and code, they're called different things, they're in many different locations. There's a bit of translation that needs to happen somewhere, and that's a people problem. There's been no shared responsibility, there's been no communication. There's been a handover, probably over quite a large metal fence between designers and developers, because there's fear. There's probably like spikes and stuff on top. And in the real practical world, how does stuff get in front of people? That's big. Some of these big enterprise people use huge third-party development partners. How do you manage that? How are you ever going to impact that? So understanding this stuff, as far away as it might be for you, is huge. So this is my time for water. And so we get a bit closer and see there's actually people in this screenshot. There has been the whole time. So we can actually do more about all of these systems that are in place, which we almost took for granted. When we start to think about the who's, the how's, the what's, we've got nothing but questions. Part of these audits looking at workflow and people, it starts to get quite big. But this is where the work really comes. And it links with what Amy was saying before, where this is so much about people. You can have the best components and the best named tokens in the world. No one has to care. No one actually has to use them. Unless you also want to equip the design system team with big sticks. But I don't recommend that. Practically, how do you imagine this is going to work? Yes, you've seen all these amazing design systems, and they are polished, and they're well documented, and it looks amazing. How's it going to work for you? Given the resources or any amount of buy-in, does anyone even want you to do this? It might just be scratching your own itch. So broadly, there's kind of three models that you could come across. Ideally, it would be great to have a centralized design system team. That would be great. And that can work in a number of ways. Either that team creates all of the components and assets that you need, or it can be there for guidance, or it can vary massively. The dynamic within that relationship can be quite varied. You could have a federated model where you say we don't have resource for a centralized team. So the next best thing is to have a collective which assigns some of their team from their feature or product work. That can be challenging in its own way. How does everyone have time to significantly contribute towards this? Because really it's like a side of desk thing almost. That can be difficult for its own reasons. What I've tended to see more of is a hybrid model. So there are some people centralized doing a recognized chunk of the work, but there's really tight feedback loops with people in the product teams. So you have that balance of the knowledge close to the user, close to the business problems, but also making sure it's appropriate for a system. And again, that dynamic isn't always easy, but it feels like that, for many big places, is pretty close to a good thing. When we think about strategy, if we're clear on why we're doing this, how are we going to execute it, what's our North Star, what are we heading towards, you can't fix all of those problems that you found originally. You're going to have people and things to work around. Spending time on things like strategy, considering stakeholders aren't just those senior people that pay your wages, they're your peers, they're people in different departments. And thinking about, with all of this knowledge we've now got, how can we start to think about governance? So how do we make decisions together? How do we communicate really, really well? How do we know what a good change to the system looks like? That alone is worth a talk at some point, just saying. And you can bake things like accessibility and inclusion in to some degree, exactly like Amy was saying, where even just from documentation, there might never have been a central point of all of this knowledge. So what started off as we need to document components could be, this is a repository for shared knowledge, of which components are artifacts. So you can have the best, most accessible components in the world, but you put them together, and the flow doesn't work, or there's stuff missing. So skilling people up is a vital part of that centralization. And with this being a people section, communication is almost always the issue. I mean, it just is for everything, isn't it? Where people are concerned, communication is hard. And depending on the structure, how big your company is, it only gets harder. So when I think about layers of influence almost, it's like there's a sense of how you talk as a design system team in the middle. You can have shorthand, you might have tools and technical details that work for you. Outside of that, the people around you, the consumers of it from design or development, they'll have a different priority, a different way of doing things. And then when you get outside of that, they need probably less detail, probably less interested, but you probably shouldn't leave them out. So when you get to that whole all-hands business meeting, maybe say, by the way, we're working on this thing, it's called a design system, and this is what it does. This is where you can find us. That might be it. But it forms a part of an internal comms plan. So going into this, I did not think I'd be doing some kind of a comms plan that's so far outside of my comfort zone and whatever I've done before, but you get a sense of, even starting with something basic, can you group these audiences into types of people? Is that a thing you could do? What kind of tooling do they use? Do they prefer email? Can you make generalizations like that? The thing is, it's something you can share openly and critique it and say, we think this might be right. Is it working for you? So there's all these different ways you want to communicate, all of these different messages that you need to get across to different people. And when you look at scale, again, one of these things design systems should help, the scale of the organization makes this really daunting. And again, with that whole thing of people within product teams, they've got the knowledge and experience. You're close to the coalface, if you like. You're solving user and business problems. So making sure that you get a sense of, is this working? No? Cool. Let's listen to your feedback and be shown to listen. Just saying, give us your feedback, is like you might as well throw that in the bin. But acting on it and showing that you've heard and actually listened is huge. I think at this point in this journey, we're not really even at components yet. We've gotten still quite high-level stuff. But you can start documenting. Really, you don't have a design system, but this could be your starting point. All the stuff you've found, all the conversations you've had, all form a vital backbone of how it might work. Get it in a shared repository of some kind for people to be a part of. Take them on the journey. So again, looking at shiny design systems, you'll see this polished, brilliantly documented stuff, and that is awesome. But you never see the stuff behind the scenes well enough. The count of, maybe you've had the same problem as well, like you do a bit of an audit, and you see like 27 variants of your primary call to action. You might be the first person that's found that, and you can't keep it to yourself. Document it. This is the state of the problem that we're trying to fix. The next time you come to the documentation, we hope it will be better. If you have feedback for us of how we can help you so we can have less duplication, because again, with that development part of it, maybe you're less familiar with that. So what I found was a previous employer, the platform team had architecture decision records. So someone would propose a technology or a technical change, and there'd be a discussion, and they would capture the context of that discussion and whether it was a positive or negative outcome. So I kind of think that might be a thing we could appropriate for design systems, where it's a short document, but this forms a history. So imagine someone says, I've heard about these design token things, we should totally do that. But at that time, you don't have the resource, you don't have the expertise. And so quickly you fill this out and go, it sounds like it's really cool, but not now. Maybe you've come across this too, but at some point you go, oh, we should do this thing, I've got an idea. And they're like, oh no, we talked about that before. What happened? Oh no, we're just not going to do it. Because that whole context is lost. And you can get stonewalled on things that might now be appropriate. If you've got this saying, oh, 2 years ago, we had a conversation about design tokens. It wasn't right then. We should probably do it again. Things have changed. Otherwise, how do you know? Personally, one thing I find valuable, like capturing everything, like documenting stuff right from the beginning, is working in the open as much as possible. That will be really uncomfortable for lots of people, especially if you have silos or people don't generally communicate. And this is how a design system team or collective can be different. Don't hide your workings out or all this discovery you've done. Share it willingly and openly. Invite challenge. That's huge. And part of the education and outreach thing is, it's not like a product you deliver will tell you how to use it. It never ends. So thinking about people tend to think about, oh, it's really hard, I can't get people to use my design system. Without a lie, I've been on so many calls where normally the marketing department go, what's a design system? And they've just been told to use it. So again, that whole empathy of, how would you feel if someone had been off in a coven or whatever, devised a new way of working and turned around and told you to use it? Of course they're not going to adopt it. You've put them on a defensive. You've said, well, we've got a better way of working, guys. Just change everything you're doing. So doing all that people bit first, before you have anything, it might not fix all your problems, but it can help. They're on the journey with you. They have an opportunity to be aware of progress. They have an opportunity to say, does this apply to me? Or if not now, when? Should I get engaged with this? Again, talking about that contribution model, that's another whole big thing. I'm not going to do that now. But if you, as an individual designer or developer, solve a problem, a new problem, how does everyone else get the benefit? How do we fold it in and contribute to the design system? Maybe you've got your own process for that alone. Yeah, something like that. Someone says, here's a component we've made, maybe you need to refactor it, maybe you've generated it yourself. What about bugs and improvements? This is still really high-level stuff, right? We're not getting into specifics just yet. Who's going to do that? If we're looking at that workflow we talked about earlier with a regular product team, if they find a problem, who's going to fix it for them? Is it you? But then you've got all these other things to do. That should be helping them to do their job. They should be delivering really high-quality stuff. And if you're not prepared to go there, oh, crap, yeah, if there's a bug, that's probably our fault, isn't it? We'll get around to that. It's not good enough. We're not doing our job. So before we've got any decisions, we're like, how are we going to do it? So we start to map out a bit of a wider thing now, looking at a basic workflow. We should be empowering people on that middle path. They're doing the job that they were paid to do. And then, now there's all this other work. How are we going to do that? So that was the macro bit. Really, it's almost like make less assumptions and be curious and capture everything. You might be the first person that's ever seen the business this way. Also, cut yourself a break. You see all the amazing work people have done with these incredible design systems. They might have been doing that for years. They might have had more resource than you can dream of. So cut yourself some slack. So we're getting closer. Dude's got a hand. He's got a back of a hand. So we can go into micro level now. This feels a bit more familiar, but you'll see a lot more parallels with what we've already talked about. As a designer, it's really hard to realize what your work, your craft is about isn't real. No one's using it, just other designers. So seeing it as an aspiration of what you would like to be executed in development is a fair place to start. I think to me, it's just not real if the end user is really actively using it. Come back. You can make the best components in the world, but if they're not actually used by people, how do you know they're any good? They need to be out in the wild. They need to be finding the problems. So when we bearing that in mind, get into componentization, based on that quick UI audit, it's very tempting to go, I found these buttons. We'll make a button component, and we know what it is. It's easy enough. Part of the exercise there is, what are they for? Getting under the hood, asking some questions. What is the archetype of your particular button or other given component? Again, it's another prompt. You don't jump into solutions, start making anything. A button should be a quite simple example, but already we're like, well, this is for the end user. Cool, we're quite clear on that. Should be for other designers to use internally. But we know what a button does. Do we? As a designer, how many times have you done something which looks like a button, which is actually coded as being a link? Standard problem. So on one of the variants of this button, there was an arrow. Is that an image? Is it not? Blah, 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 blah. How is it, as a designer, to use this stuff? When you get components and you bring them into your work, is it easy? Is it clear? As a developer importing these components, does it feel like something that is helping you? So before we go looking at components and what we do with the buttons I just stole from Vitaly's site, there's a different way of thinking about it which I find quite useful. They're not just chunks of UI. They're solutions to solved problems. We've come across this before, and this is our response to it. So if you look above your basic components, and you've got maybe a complete form or a way of having FAQs. We've come across that before, and this is our response. FAQs is a classic. There's a higher order component. It might have a title. It might have an accordion. It might have a link, maybe some extra text. So our response to FAQs, our solution, is all of this. As a designer and developer, pulling that into your work, it's a black box. You don't know necessarily how that's been made. We could swap out the accordion for a list. It's still solving FAQs. You're relying on the system by saying, we've come across these problems before. So let's go a little bit deeper. Anatomy is what we're really here for. So when I talk about archetypes, this is very often what I try and end up with. Super basic and really, really lo-fi. Start asking those questions about what design decisions have we made that make this our button, not just a button. Because there's a lot of character in those on Smash and Mac. And we look at some of these things and think, typography is a broad term. So actually, we're starting to dig a little bit deeper and say, what we mean by that is a number of things. So when you look at it, there's a lot of design decisions in there. We've gone from looking at a screenshot, we picked out this particular component, and we started to dig that a little bit deeper. Not everything needs to be a design token, by the way. It might be that you're making a website, in which case, happy days, you'll be using CSS and stuff. What if you're not? What if you want to make a native app? the same time. It's trying to store in the things that we need for our output. Some things like width of a button can be left for later. So we take all these design decisions that we've made and lay them all out. It doesn't get much smaller than that. So the difference is, to make them useful and more appropriate for its system, is thinking more about semantic naming. So here we've got green and lighter green. That's what I saw. That was in that screenshot. There were some spacing numbers. I pulled them from the code. That's fine. What if any of those values change? So now if we look at semantic naming, like that action, that color is now about action. You could use it for a number of things. What if spacing, based on this one observation, we come up with names for it? This is close spacing, this is relaxed. The beauty is when people get used to these terms that are an abstraction, the values can change, and people have to rely on the system. So looking back, our radius was 11 pixels. If in my design or my code I said I'll use my soft radius, it sounds a bit weird, but you're trusting the system. That value could change to 20 pixels. It doesn't matter. You trusted that this abstraction, this name that we've given it, can represent its use case. So it might be 11 pixels today, it could be 6 tomorrow. It doesn't matter. Trust the system. So we dive in even further, and we get to design tokens. The power here is that, using Token Studio as an example, this is a thing that blurs the line between design and development in an ideal world. If you've not used Token Studio before, it's been around for a while and really mature and does a hell of a lot. Which means you have a UI you can have in Figma there to define tokens and all this complicated stuff. But then you can push directly out to something like GitHub. That's amazing. As a designer, you're now inputting into a technical process. Jeez. Under the hood, they're like this. This is the only code you'll ever see me put on a slide. So they're not sexy to look at, but they're relatively human readable. So it's a color called action. It's got value. Its type is color, just so we're quite clear. And if you want, you can give it a description. It's really lightweight. So the magic is that in Figma, you can use that plugin. We have JSON. All of this is now becoming a standard. So we get to really get this interoperability between design and code. So all of these things that I picked out of our audit, I've now got values against them. We feel so far away from design at this point. You can see how these lines blur with design and development. We can get quite complicated with this notion of design tokens. You can point at other tokens. You can have multiple values and express really complicated things. And looking at it like that feels really weird for a designer. You've not had to do that. You're probably used to working visually. And as a developer, you can look at that and go, I can probably do something. But it's still not usable. So there's a few really quick bits to get through. Naming. Doesn't matter. Move on. There you go. Easy. So Nathan Curtis does loads of great work, but one of the things is, in one of his bits of research, you see how different everyone's naming structures are and why. Consensus is hard, isn't it? Nobody has this sorted. You understand your problems. Just name it and move on. Look how different Bloomberg do it to Adobe. I think whatever you're doing is probably OK. Likewise, if you hear about the three-tier structure, where you have core or global tokens, semantic reference tokens, or component-level tokens, maybe you don't need that. The core or global tokens store values very literally. Reference tokens would point at them. Component-level tokens, only if you really want to do themes. You could just start with that. Solve your problems. We can't really use design tokens directly, so we can use something like Style Dictionary. It's magic, by the way, actual magic. As a developer, you can run this process, and it will get all of your tokens and spit you out CSS or whatever you need for native apps. It is magic. So there's so much we can do. By changing a theme, your button can look completely different. It's just about relationships between tokens. It's the same component, but it looks so different because we pointed our tokens at different other tokens. Incredible. And this animated GIF really shows that in Figma, you can now see the impacts of themes. We've been able to do this stuff in CSS for ages, but this is in design. Just going, yeah, I'll just change the theme and see what this layout looks like. Easy. It's ridiculously powerful. So just to summarize, here's our galaxy. Loads of pretty planets and stars. Very high level again. I know that was a lot to take in, and that's kind of the point. Lots of amazing resources out there might make you feel like jumping straight into components is the right thing to do, and it might be. All I'm saying is there is a hell of a lot that exists outside of that, which will help with some of the bigger challenges like adoption, contribution, because they're your problems, not anyone else's. Quick takeaways. Focus on your problems, understand your environment, audit everything, and be quite clear on where the structure and communication problems are before you begin. When it comes to people, there's a lot going on that you can't see. This is where the problems always are. When you get into the detail, like with the naming thing, perfect is the enemy of good. Do something that works for you now. Be prepared to change it, and change isn't a scary thing. It might take you some time, but bake it in. Assume it's going to change. I fundamentally believe that our job in design systems is to empower other people. So we can be opinionated and do things that are right for the system, but we have to be humble and empathetic for all those people trying to get on with their jobs that we should be helping. To solve your problems. I'm fairly sure in this room you are not actually Adobe or someone, so just start from a sensible point of your issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan. Jeremy, for the conversation. It's so interesting to see you kind of really taking this, how would I put it best, like really taking this full picture, like taking a look at the full picture of where we are, where we tend to focus on, and what is actually involved. I think, why do you think that is actually, before I jump in questions, why do you think that is that we tend to be kind of jumping, most of the time, jumping right away into components? Like just components, let's just make sense of components, group components, name components, organized components, things like that. So is it because the other issues, like the people issues, you know, how people communicate and everything, is it just because it's much more complicated? Or
yeah, I think so. I think it's just not a leap for us to go either a designer or a developer. If I just did that, it'd be so much better. You know what we really need is just a set of components. And you might be right, but that will only get you so far. And so you don't have to see all of this stuff and go, that's just too big to fix.
Right.
There will be something that you can do.
So when you start building out a design system, or if you recommend, let's say, to a company that's just about to start building a design system, you would spend like probably a sizable chunk of time just researching how company works and all.
Yeah.
So at which point do you know that you can actually start with components?
I think you can start alongside that, because you need to prove it out and go like, this might be the first time you tried working that way, trying to make reusable components.
Yeah.
And so if that's a new thing for you, try it. Find the pain points early. Try and work out, like, do we have skills amongst us to do this, or do we need to do something else? Mm-hmm. While you're looking to those big things and whiteboarding and trying to make sense of the madness, you can do both.
Okay. Sasha is wondering, is there a case where you would not suggest using a design system? Is the answer to why do we need a design system sometimes we don't?
Yeah. And that's a great way of doing myself out of work.
Yeah.
No, I mean, in all honesty, if you look at your problems that you're solving, be honest with yourself. Maybe you're not going to get the answer that you want. Maybe spending all of this effort and trying to make a business case isn't going to change the problems you've got. If the problems are structural or something, no amount of components or design tokens are going to fix that.
Yeah. So if you have like a lot of communication problems and
Yeah.
people problems, then you probably need to address them before you actually move on to, trying to get a buy-in for a big design system.
But again,
effort.
it's what's in your ability to try and resolve.
Yeah.
And so you probably can't fix everything. But what can you have an impact on? Is it as simple as within design, there is some poor communication? Start bringing those people together. It might just be, do we all do the same thing in the same way? How do you do that thing you do? Like, it might be the first time that conversation's been had. And so bringing people together, and again, grabbing that knowledge and putting it somewhere central, is something to build from. You can't make an amazing set of components and go, cool, I'm going home.
Yeah, that's right. More questions that came up. One of them came from Christoph. In a world where code is rewritten every couple of years, isn't building a design system sometimes almost lost battle or forlorn hope?
Can be. Yeah. Again, honestly, like if you're the kind of place where you're going to...
UI design system consultant, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Don't do it. It's a folly. But the other thing is, again, looking at, I know it's really, really quick, but something like Style Dictionary, taking your tokens and spitting out some kind of output, that gives you some base variables to work from, that kind of stuff. You might switch from using React to going back to Java or something and do it the other way around. It's fine. You've still got the core values that you can reuse, and you're not starting from scratch. So by bringing things together but still having a separation, it's okay. And so again, if you have separate CSS from your JavaScript from your HTML, you might change the way you do CSS. Fine. The rest of the system's still valid.
Yeah. I'm wondering, I think that at this point, I'm wondering how many of us actually working on trying to consolidate design systems. Like maybe you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in your organization, and you try to kind of, at this point, to bring it into one. Anybody working on something like this? A few people. Seems like in enterprise level, you see quite a few companies that are, okay, that product team has this system, and that product team has the other, and this one has just a component library, and this one has a UI kit, and how do you start out a project where you kind of want to, you have something or some artifacts already, and you want to bring them into one? How would that work?
I think a lot of it goes back to that point of value. So that sounds like a lot of work, right?
Right.
That's not going to happen quickly.
Yeah.
So you're going to go off in a room with X amount of people, and then one day emerge, and it's going to be fixed. Probably not. So where is the value for you personally in engaging with this piece of work for the other people around you? It might start by just making everything visible. By the way, everyone, this is what we've got. We now consider this all to be a design system. Yeah, it's fragmented, but let's start by agreeing this is what it is. Where are the opportunities to really get any benefit? You could spend hours bringing it all together in an Uber design system. Why? Because if you haven't asked that question and you're just doing it, how are you going to justify any of that time? You're not going to see any end results, because the end result should be there is no difference for the end user there. They don't care where the components come from. And so you've spent months and months on this consolidation process, which feels like the right thing to do. Why? Just keep asking why until you feel that you've genuinely got an answer. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. And as much as I love doing that stuff, I really love doing all those crazy problems, I won't do it until I'm really sure why I'm doing it. It's a waste of everyone's time otherwise.
Okay.
I shouldn't be telling you that, should I?
That's okay. It's a safe place. Mario is wondering, naming tokens takes time, renaming tokens breaks systems. I see many resources thrown onto naming tokens, even if it's not needed, but just to be prepared. What do you think about starting only with global tokens and only add semantics later if needed?
I'll do it the other way around. Because if you have that tiered approach, the global layer shouldn't be used directly, mainly because those values should be able to change over time. So that example of an action color, that might be green today, and you might have a bit of a rebrand tomorrow and go, we're going for spinning and on fire.
No.
No, you could.
No, we would not.
All right. Purple?
Probably not.
All right. Damn.
But other color, maybe?
Yeah, but another color. So you could say, all right, we've changed from green to blue for our main call to action. That should be effortless and not have an impact. So if you started with global tokens, you've got to change something to make that work. If you've got people used to semantic first, that's always the layer they're going to consume. So start semantic, and if you need global, work backwards. If you need component level tokens for theming, work forwards.
Okay.
But once you get that reliance on that abstraction is really important.
Patrick is wondering, design systems are often created due to lack of consistency. But isn't consistency just overrated? We can help users get their work done without a consistent UI.
Yeah. So the other thing that goes around with consistency is how do you measure
I
it?
like your kind of, you're taking a, I don't know how to answer that. I like your answers. Keep going.
Well, the big problem with consistency is how consistent are you? Where's the metric around that? I don't know. So it feels like it's quite ephemeral. So if it's ephemeral, it's really hard to agree that this is the extent of the problem, so this is how much effort we can put in to find a solution. You go, oh, but we're wildly inconsistent. Where? Is it so much inconsistency, so inconceivably bad, we should spend months on a design system?
Yeah.
If it is, again, you've got a bigger problem. If you're that wildly inconsistent, maybe people aren't sharing their work. Maybe people aren't communicating. So a design system won't automatically fix that.
Yeah.
So the problem is that people aren't talking and agreeing. It's a people problem.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we always try to think about, like, we design a creative design system for the sake of consistency. Consistency is so important. We want to create alignment, but these things don't necessarily reflect in some business value or improving like the way of how people work. I think in the very beginning you mentioned that actually looking into like metrics, success metrics for a design system, that's difficult. I think one of the really interesting articles I read was on Pinterest blog, I think, where they wrote about how they measure the reusability of components in the design system, where they were basically tracking, I think, whatever they've been pushing into production for the last 1 month or 2 months, just how much of that is reusing what has been coming from the design system. I'm wondering, what is your take on metrics or success criteria for a design system? So obviously, talking to people and figuring out if they actually use it, how they use it is important. Do you have any particular tools or any particular methodologies of how to measure success?
It's genuinely really hard. So if you think that from a centralized team, you need to know if you're successful or not. So what's your hypothesis? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? Again, if you're clear on the problem, then very often some kind of solution and some kind of measurement of that comes naturally. All right, so if you hypothetically say there's a scale from 0 adoption to 100%, to me, 100% sounds absolutely the wrong thing to do, because there is no experimentation, no solving new challenges happening. It's all the design system. So what are all these designers doing? They're not solving problems. They're putting together bits of UI. So with adoption, if you had cold metrics, then it's like, well, what's good? It's not 100%, so what is good? And I think that there's a problem with a lot of the metrics where the cold numbers don't tell a story very well. And almost design system success is through the success of the solution for the end user. So some of that might be more qual metrics and going like, how long might it take you to do this? Anecdotally, did you have a good experience using it? Do you feel it helped you get a solution? That's not necessarily the cold hard numbers that we expect from metrics, but I find them more valuable myself.
Okay. Well, I think we could keep going forever. There are questions that keep coming in and in. So if you have any questions to Dan, you can also find him next to the fireplace. Any words of wisdom, last words of wisdom?
No, but like you're probably doing it okay. Just don't give yourself a hard time just because it's not as good as a massive design system. Be pragmatic and be really clear on what problems you are solving for yourself in your organization.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Dan.
Thank you.
Wonderful.